thank you so much, Mark. Those questions were very, very pertinent, and the answers were so great that they have left a huge appetite for more. And I'm glad that all of us are here, and we've got so many questions around some of the topics that you discussed. So we'll get into that now. But before we do that, I want to do two things. One, I want to invite all the participants to use the Q&A function of Zoom to ask any other questions that you may have. Of course, we will be covering all the questions that have been asked so far. So very interesting and intuitive, as I mentioned earlier also, the impact of this whole changed way of working has been most profound on our personal lives. And that's manifesting itself in mental health issues, challenges also. What is interesting here to see is that while the global trend has been that people have reported enhanced productivity or increase in their productivity, here with this interesting group, about 40% people are saying that there has been a negative impact on productivity, which is interesting. In fact, these findings are pretty much in line with what we have found across the globe in our research. And I think that leads to my first question, which I will perhaps start with you, Mark, because this morning you've been asking all the questions to the ladies here. And then, of course, this question is relevant for everybody. And therefore, I'm posing this question with to everybody, starting with Mark. So, Mark, how are you looking after your own mental health? And what is your advice to fellow HR leaders concerning self-care? Because sometimes we tend to forget about ourselves and continue to do the work for the larger workforce.
Thanks, Shaakun. It is a good question, and I'm going to be really interested to hear the other answers as they come through. I know that from my own perspective, I find it very easy to jump straight into a whole bunch of new routines, but didn't really focus in on what that actually meant for me in terms of, was I being productive? Have I put it in summary first, and was I looking after myself? And I really discovered, when I was probably 1 month or so in, so probably middle of April, I kind of took stock of where I was at. And some of the things that have been said up until this point, I was working, way more hours. I felt like I was more productive, but I wasn't necessarily. I used to fly on average once or twice a week. So I spent an awful lot of time traveling, but, did work at the same time. And, all of that changed. And I didn't really have, a great place to sit and work. I hadn't figured out Zoom and everything else. We were using Skype at this point, and I had to bring in Zoom and other technologies to make it work. And I think what really made the difference for me was to take a step back and look at the impact that it was having on both my personal and my professional life, and start to put in some rules or some structure around how I'd actually operate it. And I think the most important part is really focusing on the outcomes that I wanted to achieve, both from a personal perspective, but from a work perspective as well. I manage a team of around 100 people. So, trying to communicate to them more frequently and help them understand the outcomes that I was trying to achieve. But also with my family, I have 2 kids. There are certain outcomes that I want to achieve at home as well. And so stopping kind of micromanaging almost and starting to focus in on outcome-based and having a few rules around, this is where I'm going to sit, these are the hours that I'm going to work, and this is how I'm going to achieve that, not balance, but integration between work and life. That's, I guess, how I did it. And that's the advice I'd have for others, is to put some structure around it. And personally, for me, that's really what made the difference.
Yeah. In fact, you are so bang on, Mark. Like you, I traveled a lot, and once I stopped traveling, I realized the positive sides of traveling. Those long flights that we took gave us a lot of me time, so to say, and that's something that I missed a lot. So Krupali, if I may come to you, what are you doing, and what is your advice to the fellow HR leaders?
I love this me time word, because that's one thing that I definitely feel that I've been missing in this pandemic. Personally, what I started doing for my me time, or the space to unwind, is started getting back to my workouts after a reasonable time of worrying about stepping out of the house. So at least start going for walks. To also something that my daughter put me on to is painting, and that was a great de-stress time that I got with her, on being with her at the same time doing something for myself. So that helped me a lot. And we have an interesting corner for employees. It's been offered on the health and well-being side for quick breakout. In you have like 5 minutes puzzle time, or you have some jigsaws, or you have some games which are available for employees for like a quick 10 minutes breakout that you want during the day. So I started using that a lot, and that helped. Another digital platform that we extended for the employees that helped us in a big way, and that one area that I think I'm really grateful to.
I'm sure painting yourself and painting with the daughter is really one of the great things from a mental well-being perspective, and
Yeah,
I'm so
absolutely.
glad that you are doing that. Leena, I know you are facing some challenges with the connectivity, so you may not be available on video, but on audio, would you like to comment and give your advice about mental well-being to the fellow HR leaders here?
So Shaakun, I think it's a very adaptive process. And one has to understand their own boundaries. I think initially 2-3 months, just responding to what we were facing was very challenging, tough personally for me. But then I started creating space for quiet uh, reflection, mindfulness, and I guarded that space, very, very, I would say, with a lot of strong arms around that. So I think, knowing your own boundaries helps. You also have to do some physical exercise. So, first few months we were just grappling how to go about our lives, and after that, I quickly got down to doing yoga myself. I have a dog who makes sure that my life is balanced. So yesterday I was on a call till 7:30, and promptly at 7:15 he came, zoomed into the call, and made sure that he was telling me that it's time, quit for today. So, you do have to make sure that this family supports you, and they also help you through this whole process. It's individual process, and therefore each person has to find their own way. But everybody knows, that they are feeling stressed, and you have to then take care of yourself before you take care of others. So that's my mantra, on this.
No, I'm glad, and perhaps that's the reason it is said that dog is human's best friend, because they can really sense that. In fact, Mark, I loved what you said during the conversation, that a disruption is a disruption, and we really cannot do anything about it. How we respond to it is something that we can control. And I think, Leena, mindfulness is at the foundation of it. It's a very simple thing, but perhaps the most difficult to achieve. And I'm glad that you're focusing on that. Talking about mindfulness, when we are managing this change of technology, change of policies, processes, and more importantly, change of culture, I want to spend a couple of minutes because there are a lot of questions that our participants have asked today around culture. There's a specific question I have for you, Leena, because uh, you are really looking at the culture transformation and cultural continuity of probably one of the oldest and most value-driven conglomerates in this part of the world. So I want to start from you, and then I want to pick some thoughts from Krupali and Mark as well. So question is that when you talk about culture change and mindset change, there are a lot of micro activities that need to be done, right? So how are you managing that, and what's the role technology is playing in that?
So technology has really helped, Shakun, and we actually recently launched a new avatar of Tata Management Training Center, which is where we train our leaders across all Tata Group companies. And it's rechristened as Tata Tomorrow University. And the name itself suggests that we are embracing the future. And a lot of the content, the way that we are curating programs has been informed by the subtle shifts in culture that we want to drive across the group. So if it wasn't for the digital platform, if it wasn't for the digital Tata Tomorrow University that we launched, I don't think we could have easily embarked on this journey ourselves. I think we've just begun. We haven't gone down to the micro activity that you mentioned, but making sure that information and information access is available to people. Our language and our focus around learning is uh, talking the same thought process that we want people to have is really where we have experimented with. And I think technology has played a huge role in our ability to be able to reach out to a multitude of our companies.
No, it's heartening to see, and I've been following the evolution of TMTC into the Tomorrow Tata University. I do hope that the campus is left untouched. That's the old school thing that I've spent a lot of time at TMTC campus, so I would not like to see that changed in any ways, but it's great to see.
From
Mark,
outside, yes, Shaakun. From outside, it is untouched. Inside, of course, we have to digitally upgrade as well. So that's.
yep. I'm sure soon we'll have opportunity to use the best of both worlds, the new technology and the old school. Sorry, Krupali and Mark, if you've not visited the TMTC campus in Pune, you missed something, but so be it. I'm a very proud ex-Tata employee, so and of course a consultant to Tata. Mark, I want to come to you with the same question, because not only you've done that for Deloitte yourself, but you also advise a whole lot of organization around this culture continuity and culture change. How is the best way to do that, and what's the role that technology is playing?
So I think it's different depending on the organization, obviously, but I think there's a few things, Shaakun, that I would say are quite common. And it links back to the topic that we've been discussing today. I hear words like wellness, for example. The word that we would use at Deloitte is well-being. They sound very similar, but they're actually quite different. And well-being actually has much more of a culture element embedded in it. Wellness is really, having the right policies around, medical health and so on. But well-being is much more around, the mental health aspect. But it's things like, what kind of mission, vision, goals does an organization have, and do they match up with the individual employees? That's incredibly important. It's things like transparency and trust. So when managers are making decisions around, succession pools, so who should be the successors for these roles? Is it transparent? Is honesty seen to be, a real part of the organization? So all of these cultural elements, again, it comes back to the manager, as I mentioned earlier. I find that incredibly important. So, upskilling the managers so that they understand these things, they understand the importance of transparency, matching of those visions and goals of the organization, alongside those of the employees. But having that platform of technology underneath, which gives the managers access to information. So when he or she sits down to have a conversation, we don't want the technology to take away the conversation, we want it to power the conversation. And that's where the whole continuum kind of finishes off, where the manager is able to have that conversation and give positive feedback or negative feedback. One of the challenges we see with many clients is managers are great at giving good news, but they're terrible at giving bad news. When they give bad news, they blame it on HR, and when they give good news, they take the credit for it. As we move into this type of environment now, we need our managers more than ever to be true people managers. And that's managing outcomes, as I mentioned earlier on, but it's matching up and understanding the need for transparency, the need for trust, and the need for that matching of the culture and vision of the organization to really drive, employees' well-being.
Indeed, the role of managers cannot be undermined. And I think in the current context, while the world is talking about mitigating the challenges using technology, we should never forget the importance of the managers there. So Krupali, with you, I want to ask the same question, but a slightly more tactical detail that one of the participants wants to understand. How did you go about setting up specific task force or a team to take care of not only health and safety, but also the mental well-being of people?
Well, we jumped into this right in the beginning of the pandemic. We created a task force and a helpline, which was made available to employees right from the day one, where we started asking employees to be away from workplace and try working from remote offices, remote locations, which was right before we even started announcing at an organization level that we will not allow employees beyond these permissions to come into the office. So that actually helped us in a big way to begin with. We set up a helpline through a WhatsApp channel, through email, and through calls. While the calls which were coming on this were not necessarily only around worry about COVID or worry about what's happening, it was also addressing questions about, am I expected to come to office, or is it okay if I ask my manager that I can't come because I'm worried about my health, or my family is not allowing me to come because the essential service branch requirement stuff, etc., etc., to the areas in about somebody in my family is affected with COVID, or I have someone with symptoms, how do I reach out? So that task force helped us in understanding the problems and also respond to that pretty quickly. Things like making doctors available on call, doctors available through Zoom for consulting on the panel of the organization, while you were still dependent on the government machinery to set up their infrastructure. There were doctors available to even address the query. So task force helped in some ways like this in terms of dealing with uncertainties, and eventually this team helped in setting out protocols on a week after week or a month after a month on what to expect, how to expect. We started rolling out formal communication around what are the protocols that we're expecting employees to follow for the month, every month, on guidelines on various things. If you are in the office, if you are expected to be in the meet the customer in the customer premises, or when you go back home while you're traveling in the company transportation, or you're traveling by yourself, guidelines around if you must travel outside the city because you're going back to your hometown. All those started getting covered into our weekly, monthly guidelines that we started, protocols that we started giving out to the employees. So task force actually helped us in a big way in journey, because it was not just focusing on addressing COVID issues.
Great. Krupali, Leena, Mark, there is so much more that we can discuss, and there is so much that we can gain from you, but then we all have tight schedules, and I'm sure all of us have not a flight to catch today, but another Zoom meeting to attend, so we'll have to stop it here. But clearly, I'm seeing that we are living in very challenging yet very, very interesting times. Like any other disruption, this disruption has brought in a lot of opportunities and a lot of challenges. Mental health and mental well-being being one of those biggest challenges that is emerging now, right? We are just about to receive the vaccine for the COVID crisis, but the mental crisis vaccine is just not there, right? And therefore, I believe human empathy, human ingenuity, and artificial intelligence, these three things put together in the right technological context and the right cultural context, perhaps will be a very potent tool to help people overcome the mental health issues and also become more mentally healthy and mentally mindful, I would say. So thank you so much for your time. For the participants, the on-demand recording of all these sessions will be available should you wish to revisit some of our discussions or share it with others. Once again, thank you, Krupali. Thank you, Leena. Thank you, Mark, for your time and all your inputs. And a big thank you to all our participants for taking time out. We look forward to hosting you for many such events in days to come. Have a wonderful day ahead.